Welcome to the Fantasy Six Pack Weekly Waiver Wire Show. This is for the Waiver Wire for Week 2. I am Corey. Some people know me as CK. You can find the corresponding Waiver Wire article up on the Fantasy Six Pack. I write that one every week. It'll come out on a Monday, and then I'll try to get this out later in the evening. However, this is just going to go over the top 6 ads. If you want the full list of 20 plus names, you got to join the Fantasy Six Pack, and you can do that right on the website. You get full access to the full waiver wire list, which of course I would love for you to read, but you also get way more than that. You get all of our rankings, all of our projections. You get to join the Fantasy Six Pack Discord, where you have access to not only me, but every one of our great members of our staff. With that in mind, it's time to look at the top 6 waiver wire options for week 1. We are going to start with the tight end position, because if you played fantasy football this week and you started one of the top tight ends, chances are you came away disappointed. I know I did in many leagues. Travis Kelce, Sam Laporta, Mark Andrews, Trey McBride, Dalton Kincaid, Evan Ingram. They were supposed to be the top 6 tight ends who carried us, and they combined for less than 30 fantasy points. I don't believe any of them. They struggled to get to 50 yards receiving. That's not what we looked for. But the top waiver wire ad of the week, only 28% rostered on Yahoo, these are from Yahoo, was and is Isaiah Likely, the tight end of the Baltimore Ravens. Well, what you're thinking is, wait, how can Isaiah Likely be fantasy relevant if they're going to have Mark Andrews? Well, we just saw it, right? In the game that on Thursday night, the first game of the season against the Chiefs, he went for 9 receptions for 111 yards and a touchdown, and was a quarter of an inch away from another 10 yards and another touchdown, which would have been a monstrous fantasy game if he makes that last catch. But he has to deal with Mark Andrews. Now, 74 plays are what the Ravens ran in week 1. Mark Andrews played 58 of those snaps. Isaiah Likely played 52, so still favored Mark Andrews, but just barely. Mark Andrews ran 38 routes. Isaiah Likely ran 35 routes. Do I expect Isaiah Likely to dominate the receptions like he did week 1? Probably not. The Chiefs clearly made it a priority to try to eliminate Mark Andrews, which makes sense. That's why we saw Isaiah Likely and Zay Flowers get targeted with thrown so many targets. I do think, though, that Isaiah Likely could finish as a top 10 tight end, top 12 tight end for sure, because Lamar Jackson tends to throw it to tight ends, and Isaiah Likely is a physical freak. He can get downfield. You saw it on that long touchdown play where he makes people miss the open field. That is uncommon for tight ends. As we move forward here, we are going to move to the running back position. How about Tank Bigsby? Everybody was kind of excited for Tank Bigsby last year when he was drafted early out of Auburn as someone who might take work away from Travis Etienne. And then it didn't happen last year. Travis Etienne finished 3rd in the NFL in touches with 325. That's a lot of touches in today's modern age. But week 1, Tank Bigsby kind of did what we expected from him last year. Etienne had 12 carries for 44 yards and a touchdown. He also had a bad fumble at the 1-yard line, which was part of the reason that, honestly, that the Jaguars lost that game and Miami came back on them. But Tank Bigsby also got 12 carries. So 12 carries apiece. Tank Bigsby more efficient, 73 rushing yards. Once again, do I expect a full split? No, I don't think that it's going to be a 12 carry to 12 carry type of workload every week. But let's say they take away just 35% of the volume that Travis Etienne had last year. That's 115 touches. That's what you get at 35% of that 324. Do they all go to Bigsby? If so, 115 touches on top of what he got last year. You're talking about 150 touch running back. That's fantasy valuable. That is someone who you can use as a flex option. He is currently only 5% rostered in Yahoo leagues. That's someone that you should be looking to pick up. And I think that he might be able to be flexed very early in this season. We will move to our third recommendation here. It's another running back, Jaleel McLaughlin. So if we are looking at Jaleel McLaughlin and you say, well, the stat line is bad, you're right. It really was. The entire Broncos offense looked rough, and yet we're going to talk about 2 of them here. So the good news with McLaughlin is the workload. He took 10 carries Now, he only turned it into 27 yards, which does not take a lot of math to figure out. That is 2.7 yards per carry. We're looking for 4.3 at least. That's my goal. But if you're going to get 10 carries, that interests me. And then 5 receptions. Now, once again, 1 yard, that is a 0.2 yard per carry average. Not exactly what we're looking for. 15 touches for 28 yards. But 15 touches. That's something that you have to look at in fantasy. The Broncos ended up keeping Javonte Williams. There was talk not all offseason, but in the early preseason, there was speculation that maybe Javonte Williams is on the chopping block. And so there was enough reports then came out later. We said, well, now it looked like Javonte Williams was going to be the lead back and get a huge portion of this workload. Well, that also didn't happen because what we saw in week 1 was it looks like it's a pretty even split here. And it wasn't like Javonte Williams was more effective than Jaleel McLaughlin. He was actually less effective. 8 carries for 23 yards and 1 catch for no yardage. If this ends up being a near 50-50 split, I would not be surprised. I think this could be, if you watched any of the Cowboys game, it went 1 drive for Zeke Elliott, 1 drive for Rico Dowdle, excuse me. I'm not saying that's how the Broncos will do it, where they split drives like that, but I also wouldn't be surprised if it's not a 50-50 type of workload here in the end of the season, where Jaleel McLaughlin and Javonte Williams have a very similar amount of touches. If that's the case, at only 37% rostered, he needs to go up. Is it going to be that bad always? No, it won't. And if he's going to be the one who catches the passes, those are higher value targets. That's what we want is pass receptions, because typically it gets you in space and you can pick up bigger chunks of yards than just rushing. Now, in this one, it was the 5 catches for 1 yard. Here's what I know. Bo Nix, I watched parts of that game. He looked jumpy, which for a rookie first round pick, that's to be expected. He's going to want to check the ball down early and often. We're going to get to another receiver that got a lot of targets because of that. And if that's the case, Jaleel McLaughlin, especially in any leagues with a PPR or half PPR aspect, has to be rostered. Let's switch to receiver. And since we're already on Denver, we're going to skip around in my order a little bit here. And we're going to jump to Devaughn Vele. And so no matter what league you're in, Devaughn Vele is more than likely rostered, 0% owned on Yahoo. I know there was a lot of talk during the preseason. It was enough that I added him in a deep, deep dynasty league just in case. And through week 1, I'm pretty happy. Now, it was only 39 receiving yards. That's not much. But 8 targets, that was tied for the team lead with Josh Reynolds. Courtland Sutton might have been in that same range too. But 8 targets, now 39 yards, not great. But 23 of them came after the catch, meaning he can do something with the ball in his hands. Now, as the offense gets more, as Bo Nix gets more comfortable within this offense, some of those targets will start to move down the field somewhat. He can't be that check down worthy and take that many short targets. He will have to start to target getting the ball down the field. When that happens, Devaughn Vele, if he's getting 8 targets a game, 10 targets a game, then if he's getting 8 targets a game, 10 targets a game, he catches 6 of them instead of all 8, because the further down you go, obviously you're going to catch less of them. But maybe 6 catches, 60 yards for a rookie, that's pretty valuable. That's a wide receiver 3. Now, I'm not expecting it every week because there will be hiccups, but I also don't want to leave him on the waiver wire. And if you're in a deeper league, it's an absolute must add at this point. Let's go to a different receiver. Ooh, he is not a running back. I don't know why that says running back, but it says Wan'Dale Robinson running back. I'm sorry. Wan'Dale Robinson is a wide receiver for the Giants. And just like Devaughn Vele, Daniel Jones didn't look very good in the first week. The Giants got beat pretty soundly by the Vikings, and that will likely happen most weeks. The good news is, for fantasy purposes, if you're getting beaten soundly, you're going to throw the ball a lot. And that's what happened in this game. Daniel Jones threw the ball 42 times. Because of that, Wan'Dale Robinson got 12 targets. That's tied for Tyreek Hill. I think the only person who had more targets in week 1 was Cooper Kupp, who had 21, 22, something like that, because once Puka Nacua goes down, he gets all the targets. But 12 targets tied with Tyreek Hill, and I think Isaiah Likely for the most targets or not named Cooper Kupp in the NFL. So if you're getting 12 targets, I don't really care if Daniel Jones is your quarterback. You're going to catch some of them. And that's what we saw here. Wan'Dale Robinson went out, had, excuse me, he only had 6 receptions for, no, yeah, yeah, excuse me. I'm looking at the wrong stat line here. Wan'Dale Robinson had 6 catches for 44 yards on those 12 targets. And here's the issue, an 8 out of 5.3 yards. So he is getting another one, just like Vele, very short targets. Unlike Vele, where I think there's a chance it goes up, I don't really think it will go up with Wan'Dale Robinson. But PPR formats, I think he's going to get a lot of targets because their offensive line in New York has been a problem for years, and it still looks like it's going to be continue to be a problem. So Daniel Jones, here's the thing about the slot receiver. It's the closest one. They should get open first. And I think he's going to continue to look to him early and often. The last recommendation for the week was Greg Dortch. And if you read the waiver wire article that I typed up for week 1, I did not do a video for that. But if you read the article that I did for week 1, I actually had Greg Dortch as one of the 6 recommendations for week 1. So he is the only person who I doubled up on. Dortch did exactly what I wanted to see. And that is he was someone that the Cardinals clearly want to get the ball to. And that's what there was a little bit of chatter, then there was a little more chatter, and then the chatter just kept going. And then we saw it. And he delivered exactly what we wanted to see. He made 6 receptions himself for 47 yards, and he took a carry for 4 yards. There was talk of schemed touches, meaning runs, jet sweeps, those type of plays that look to get the ball into the receiver's hands. And we saw it with Greg Dortch. Now, I know there was a lot of concern about Marvin Harrison's targets. I still expect Marvin Harrison and Trey McBride to lead this team handily in targets over Greg Dortch. But if he finished 3rd, it really wouldn't surprise me. And on a team that's likely going to have to pass the ball early and often because Arizona's defense also will struggle. So if they're going to stay in games, we saw them. They came out looking awesome. Kyler Murray came out and was throwing the ball up and down the Bills. It did not lead to, I expected him to have a better fantasy stat line. And then when I looked at it, I was kind of disappointed. But I expect that they're going to do that again. He's going to come out. This team is going to throw the ball a lot. They're going to run a lot of plays. And Greg Dortch should be the beneficiary of that. He should be on your fantasy rosters. That is the Fantasy 6-Pack Waiver Wire 6 recommendations for week number 2. Now, I said, if you want to become a full access member, there's a code right now to join and become an all access member. You can look at it. It's right on the article. Otherwise, I believe it is F6P NFL 24. It gets you 15% off. If you become an all access member, you will get to see, obviously, the 6 that you see already for recommendations, but also some quarterback options. There's about 20 more recommendations in there. Quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. And you get to join the Discord where you can have access to me and all the other great writers here at the Fantasy 6-Pack. Until next week, guys, thanks.